Drupal community for the last couple of years. He has done a lot of patches to the Drupal core as well as contrib module. He's maintainer of GetCashTag module, like the one we use for sliding the images. So let's see what Piyush has got to tell us about caching.
Sure.
Piyush,
Thanks, Shiva.
you can get started.
Piyush, just to give you an idea, we have here people from NAC4, which is a company that is led by Shivaji. We have people from Unimity, which is my company. We have people from Micro Business Solution and Future Focus, who are all youngsters from SRM working on multiple technologies. They're here to see and understand what Drupal provides and brings to the table. We also have a couple of senior programmers from CGI and HCL.
Okay.
Thank you so much again, Piyush, to joining us remotely and doing this session with us.
It's a pleasure for me, Shamla.
Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Shamla, can you just turn this screen towards the...
Yeah. You will start again. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah. So Shamla, what else? Can you turn the screen towards the users, towards the developers?
Yeah, sure. Wait.
If it's possible.
I'm trying. Can you see?
Yeah. Yeah. This
is it okay now?
Yeah. Much better. Hey guys.
Okay.
Hey. Good morning. So quickly, I would like to know how many of you know about Drupal 8 right now, at least. Okay, cool. That's pretty good. And how many of you have worked on with Drupal 7 and worked quite in depth with Drupal 7? Okay, cool. So today we'll be mostly talking about how caching has changed in Drupal 8, why it has changed, what were the problems in Drupal 7 which developers used to face, which were difficult to avoid without hacking core, and what countermeasures were taken when Drupal 7 was in build. Okay, so I'll quickly share my screen. There's a small PPT which we'll go through and some hands-on stuffs. So can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can see the presentation.
Okay, so it's mostly around render caching, the data, the entities which get rendered on a Drupal website. Okay, so today we'll be talking about problems with Drupal 7 caching, why cache tags were introduced in Drupal 8, how do we deal with uncacheable data. So there will be some data which cannot be cached, right?
Piyush, I have to interrupt you. We are seeing a dark screen.
You're seeing a black screen.
Yeah, we don't see your presentation.
That's weird. Okay, maybe I'll have to stay in this mode. If I go to the view slide
mode, no, I think you have to have that selected.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So things which we'll go through today, problems with Drupal 7 caching, as I told you. Then why cache tags were introduced in Drupal 8 and how do they avoid the problems that were there in Drupal 7?
You need to make your presentation full screen. We can't see it very clearly.
If I go full screen, Shamla, it goes off. Let me try going to the presenter mode.
Yeah. Make it full screen. Okay.
Can you guys see it?
Yeah, we can, but it's not.
No, I switched it to full screen now.
We can lock it on.
Let me just export it to PDF and run through.
You can make it full screen.
Give me 1 second. Is this better? Can you guys see it now?
It's the same.
Better now?
No.
No? Hold on, let me stop sharing. Can you guys see it in full screen now?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So, yeah. Couple of things that we'll talk about today. It'll be mostly around Drupal 7 caching, what problems were there, and what measures were taken in Drupal 8 to leverage them, to fix them up, and how we can leverage these things that are developed in Drupal 8 to handle the uncacheable data. How this cached data is bubbled through the HTML DOM, and a little bit of introduction on how this architecture in Drupal 8, it allows us to have big pipe in Drupal 8, which is not possible in Drupal 7. Okay. So starting with problems with Drupal 7 caching. So can you guys tell me what all problems have you faced with caching data in Drupal 7 as of now? We'll obviously talk about a couple of scenarios, but I'm pretty sure we won't be able to cover all of them. But if you guys can talk about the problems that you have faced. Anything. I mean, it could be, it could even be a caching configuration not being able to get checked up. Any problems, guys? Okay, then I'll go ahead with my problems. Okay, so so let's say a same node is going to get rendered in 3 different places on Drupal in a Drupal 7 website. On the home page as a promoted content, in a view listing, and on its detail page. So you see the same set of data, it's going to get rendered 3 different times, right? Now in Drupal 7, what happens is for rendering it each time, it rebuilds the render array and re-renders them rather than trying to cache it when it's going to get rendered once and then reuse the cached content. It tries to rebuild and re-render that elements array. So do you think that's optimal? No, right?
No.
So we could obviously have used, have cached the markup once it was generated and then reuse the data from cache and rendered it. So that could have taken off a lot of load from our databases. So in Drupal 7, there was a module which was built to handle this, which was called as render cache by Fabian. Now this is one of the pillars which went into Drupal 8 as the primary render caching mechanism. So that's why in Drupal 8, anything that you render on the page, it's always a render array. It's never a, so in Drupal 7, you could directly output return hello world, right? A string. But in Drupal 8, you cannot do that anymore. Anything that needs to be rendered, it needs to be a render array. A proper array with hash type is equals to what, hash value is equals to what, hash theme is equals to what, and a lot of other keys, right? And on Drupal.org also, you have seen that there are posts with like huge number of comments, like 400, 500, 600 comments, right? So this is one of the modules which is used on Drupal.org as well to handle the rendering of comments optimally. So first time when you render the page, obviously it loads the data from the database, but next time when you load the comment entities, they are fetched from render cache. If we can quickly go to this modules link and see, so there are other problems also which are specified on the module page. So the motivation for the module was to get rid of re-rendering and rebuilding of entities which happens on a Drupal 7 website, right? But when, sorry, there was a question.
No, Piyush.
Okay, so so to solve this problem, first of all, people were trying to do something around node view and hook into that, cache the data, and then re-render it. But that doesn't scale well, right? Because node is not just the entity that you have. You could have multiple types of entities in Drupal 7, and you could develop your custom entities as well, right? So that's why when entity API came into picture, this module was hooked into with entity API, and there were sub modules that were developed for handling comments, for handling views, for handling nodes, taxonomies, etc. Right? And that's how this module takes off a lot of load from your database. And this is what, in principle, went into Drupal 8 core as render caching. Okay. Any questions so far?
So, Piyush, it's not a question, more of confirmation. So, until Drupal 7, we were able to cache only the object. When it comes to Drupal 8, we can cache even the rendered output, right?
Even the
Rendered output.
yeah, even the markup. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So with Drupal 7, you could cache the page. There was a cache page, but you couldn't cache the entities, right?
Yeah.
So with entity cache, obviously you could do that, but not in the code. You can do that.
Okay, that's only an object cache, not a output cache.
Right.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, you can.
Another problem. So how many of you have used this configuration, cache page for anonymous users? Just one? I'm pretty sure everyone would have used it.
Can you come again?
Yeah, so can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's blurred a bit.
Yeah, everything is blurred except for one configuration, which is cache page for anonymous users.
For anonymous user.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have done it.
Everyone would have used it. So does anyone know what it does under the hood actually?
What? Can you repeat your question?
So what does it do under the hood actually? What does it do internally?
Anybody knows? What does
Actually, calculates the HTML output.
So it caches the HTML output?
In its page underscore cache.
Yeah, it saves the data in page underscore cache. But what does it do when you create a new content or a new, even if a new comment is posted? How do you expect it to react? Sorry? Clear the entire page cache or clear just one of them?
What happens when a new content is added? How does it
clear the cache and you reindex it?
No, you have to be louder. The mic is not working. Turn it on.
Yes.
No?
So we have to clear the cache and reindex the page.
So you have to, yeah, I'm not talking about any manual intervention. What Drupal does internally, would it go ahead and clear the entire page cache table, or would it clear just one of the?
When a new content is added, Drupal will default cache the table and you clear the cache.
I'm sorry, I didn't get you. Could you come again?
Content when you add it, when you go visit the page, is when cache gets created, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if you're not already visited, it gets created for itself.
But the question from Piyuesh is whether it will clear the entire table or only the particular node.
Yeah, that's what the question is.
I think for Drupal 7, it will clear the whole page and recreate it.
The whole page cache table, right?
Yeah.
Let's see what happens actually. I have a Drupal 7 site running over here. Okay. I'm gonna quickly check if it's enabled. Performance. So it's enabled over here. Let me go to the database. Cache underscore page. So cache page is empty right now. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and visit this page anonymously, the home page. Okay.
Push.
Yeah.
We don't see your database.
Okay, hold on. Do you see the SQL Pro?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can
it
you see it
works.
now?
Yeah.
So can you see the cache page table? It's completely empty right now. So
Yes.
there's no data in cache in page cache. Okay. Now I go ahead and visit a content listing page anonymously. Okay. As an anonymous user. Can you see the incognito window?
Yep.
Okay. Now let's go back to the database and see if it added something in here. So you see it adds a cache record for content listing page. Okay. Right?
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yep.
Okay. Now let's say I go to this page. Oh, no, not over here. I'll have to be logged in to comment. Let's say I go ahead and add one more node. Actually, let's visit a couple of more pages before we do that as anonymous users so that we populate our cache table with more entries. Okay. Now, do you see my SQL Pro? It has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 entries, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now we go back and we try to create a new article. Okay. And we hit save.
Yes.
Right? So ideally on the content listing page, we have just added one more content. Sorry. We have added one more content, but the rest of the content, it's still unchanged, right?
Yes.
So the ideal cache behavior should have been, it still tries to utilize the cache for rest of the contents and builds a new cache for the new content, right?
Yes.
But let's see what happens in the database now. So all of the cache page entries, they go empty. So even if a new comment or a new content or anything new which is created on the website, it clears off the page cache completely. Right?
Yep.
So this is another problem with Drupal 7 caching. And the reason behind this is the way the cache clearing mechanisms that are available in Drupal 7. So either you could clear a specific cache ID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you could do a wildcard based clearing. Oh, sorry. Right? CID underscore asterisk, and that would delete all the cache IDs which have that pattern. Or you could delete the entire cache, that is just CC all basically, right? Correct? But is there any mechanism in Drupal 7 to identify that delete all of the caches which are dependent on my node/20 or node/node ID? No, right? You cannot determine that cache with cache ID X is dependent on node ID 20, right? Nothing out of the box. So that's why in Drupal 8 cache tags came into the picture. Now what cache tags allow you to do is with every renderable array, it allows you to define a couple of tags saying that this render array is dependent on these all tags. So anything related to these cache tags change, you can invalidate the cache for this render array.
There is a cache tag module in Drupal 7. No? I think so. There is a module in Drupal 7 that does.
Not very sure on that, Shamla.
Okay.
Cache tags. Okay, I can find it right now. But yeah, if there is, I'm not very sure if it solves the same purpose. Because from the core architecture itself, Drupal 7 doesn't support a way of invalidating cache automatically and detecting cache dependencies. But in Drupal 8, it's been brought into the core itself. So what happens is whenever you're defining a render array, or even if the core is going to render an entity for you, let's say your Drupal 8 website, it's rendering a node right now. Okay, so what it'll do internally is it'll build a array which will have all of the data that's related to a node. Along with that, it'll have a hash cache index wherein it'll define the tags on which this node data can be invalidated. Are you guys following me?
Yes, Piyuesh.
Okay, so it'll have cache tags. So let's say you have a node, you have created a node with node ID 20. Okay, now these cache tags would have a cache tag called as node colon 20. So if anything related to node 20 changes, it'll go ahead and invalidate all of the cache entries which are dependent on cache tag node 20. So let's say you have a view and you have a node page. Okay, and maybe a home page as well. Let's consider the same scenario which we saw here, over here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so what in Drupal 8 would happen is it will create a render array with cache tag as node colon 24 over here. Okay, now your views, it will also get tagged with node 24 since your views is going to render node 24. Okay, similarly your home page which has the promoted content will get tagged with it, and your node obviously will get tagged with it. Now any update that happens to node ID 24, let's say you go ahead and add more data to a field, the cache tag for node colon 24 will get invalidated automatically on entity save, and it'll automatically go ahead and invalidate the cache for these three entries. Got the point?
Yes.
Okay. Now moving on to the next thing. Now, how do you add cache tags to a render arrays? So this is pretty simple and pretty straightforward. So there's a typo here. Sorry for the typo. But yeah. So $elements is your render array over here. With each render array, you have a hash cache index in which you can define your tags. Okay. So all you need to do is simply add. So if it's just one cache tag, you could use string. If there are multiple cache tags, you could go ahead and use an array of cache tags. Something like you could write it something like this. So it'll be something like this: $elements of hash cache and tags equals to array node colon 1 comma user colon 1, etc. Okay, so when I say node colon 1 and user colon 1, this cache becomes dependent on the user as well. Okay.
You need to enlarge it a bit.
Yes.
Because
Sure. You can see it.
It's better.
Is it visible now?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, you could either use a string or an array over here. Array for defining multiple cache tags to get associated with a render array, or now the question comes is, do we need to define cache tags for everything manually in Drupal 8? So the answer is no. So for entities, any kind of entity that you're rendering, and any kind of and any custom entity that you have created, Drupal 8 core would take care of adding the relevant cache tags to the render array automatically. So provides you with a interface class, entity interface, and it provides you a function called as GetCashTag. So let's say you're rendering a node. You could use $node GetCashTag and get all of the relevant cache tags for a node entity. Similarly, for a user entity or any custom entity which would have created, you could always call this function to get list of relevant cache tags. Okay. You guys following me? Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So was that for a question or you guys following me? Is that a question?
Can we also override that?
Override these cache tags? Yeah, definitely. So basically it's defined as a function in the interface, right? It's declared as a function in the interface. So if you're
more of get method.
Yeah. So if you're creating a custom entity, you would obviously implement this interface and provide the definition for your get cache tag function manually, and in there you could declare whatever cache tags you want.
Okay. Okay.
Also, to answer your question in another way, you could add more data to these cache tags always, like this. So when you want to enhance your cache metadata, what you do is you get the default one in the render array, and then you could use the merge tags function which your cache class provides in Drupal 8. Okay. So this is something that you'll do when you are rendering this. You're handling the rendering of this node manually somewhere. Otherwise, yeah. Okay. Another way to do it is using the renderer service which is provided with Drupal 8 core. So you could use add cacheable dependency and go on adding cache tags to it. You could add multiple cache tags over here, and it'll automatically inject those cache tags. Okay. Now the question comes for invalidating a cache tag, which we kind of already went through while we were discussing the cache tags. So yeah.
There's a question actually.
Yeah.
So suppose for one element there is already cache tag defined, right? We are overriding with a new value, and for that particular element we are again defining something new.
Right.
So will it append or override? I mean, delete and again update it.
Yeah. So again, it depends on how you're writing it. So like over here, there is some cache tag which is already defined, right? So if you use an array,
we don't see any window.
Sorry.
We don't see any window views.
You don't see my PDF over here? That's weird. I'll try to reshare it. Cancel sharing and share it again. Do you guys see it now?
No.
Is the PDF loaded? No?
No, it's not.
No. In between it came.
Was that Shamla? Can you guys see it?
No.
So your question was what will happen when the tags are being updated?
Yeah. I mean, so like already they were defined. In your application, will it append or will you rewrite it? Okay.
So Piyuesh.
We can see a new Piyush joining us. I think he's signing on his browser. So what's the question? If you add it, if you call the same ID multiple times, how will Drupal treat it? Will it append it or will it
Rewrite it.
Rewrite it. Override it. Rather. Okay, let's wait for Piyuesh to join us back.
Can you guys see my Shamla, can you hear me?
We can hear you very well, but we still can't see your screen.
There was an error loading the app. That's weird. When I try to share my screen, it says there was an error trying to load your app. I'll try to share
We
it
can
again.
see you.
Okay. I've shared my screen again. Let's see if you guys can see it.
It sometimes takes a little longer.
Yeah. Is it visible now?
Not yet.
Okay. I'll try to share just this page. Let's see if that's faster.
You want to write on your whiteboard that's behind you? It's too far away from the mic, guys.
That's far away, but you guys won't be able to see it.
And we can't hear you.
You guys can't hear me?
We can't see. You know what? If your screen share is not working, you can open a plain Google Doc and type it out.
Yeah, I think I'll just.
We can see it now. Yeah, awesome. We can see it.
You can see my Google screen, or you can see the PDF screen.
Your presentation,
PDF.
Oh, that's too slow, I think, because I'm right now on my Google page. Anyways, so while you guys see it, so you can see this function called as cache merge tags, right?
Yes.
So that function will take care of merging your cache tags correctly, actually.
Okay. But the question was whether it will append the cache or it will recreate it.
It'll append, obviously. It's very similar to your array merge functions.
Okay.
So array merge, it actually merges the two arrays, right?
Okay. So Piyush, you have answered his question.
Okay.
So we'll combine the dependency tag. The dependency tag are the So
It will become one. Lower right.
It'll append.
Okay.
Yeah. Cache merge tags will append. If you want to override it, you can just remove these braces after tags. So in the first statement, you have $element hash cache tags and then an opening and closing braces, right? If you just remove those braces, it'll rather than inserting into a new index, it'll override the tags array completely. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good to move forward. So the next question comes is how do we invalidate cache tags, right? So do we need to invalidate cache tags manually? Yes, in some cases, wherein you are creating your cache tags explicitly, wherein you are doing some custom work. But for entities in Drupal 8, they're invalidated automatically on entity save. Okay. Can you guys see the next slide? Or is it? Okay, cool. So on entity save, it gets automatically invalidated the cache tags. If you want to invalidate them manually, the cache service, it also provides you with invalidate tags method, wherein you could either push an array or you could push list of cache tags which you want to invalidate. So let's say if you want to just invalidate the cache tag for node 5, you would pass it in node:5 and it will invalidate the cache for node 5. And this will not just impact the node view, it will also impact the view which is rendering the node /5. Okay. Any questions so far?
I think we are fine.
Okay. So let's take a look at this example all together. So till now we were looking at pieces and blocks. Now let's just try and integrate them together and see how it looks. So let's say we're trying to render a node inside a block, node 5. Okay. Okay. So we pull out the entity view, which will give me a render array, and we store it in $build. Okay. Now $build hash cache, we add the tags which are required for my custom rendering of this node. Let's say I want this cache to be dependent on the node view as well, the view mode. So in that case, I would add another cache tag called as node view. So let's say I want to cache it differently for teaser view mode and differently for full view mode. Let's say I want to cache my data differently when it's formatted as, when its body is formatted as basic HTML and when it's formatted as rich text. Okay, so you could add n number of cache tags over here the way we are doing it, right? And the block will take care of caching it that way. Got the point? Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Piyuesh, we are following you.
Okay. So this is about the cache data. Now this cache data, it's very specific to the blocks that are getting rendered on the page, right? So let's say you're rendering a block. This cache data, it needs to be bubbled across the DOM as well, so that we have a fair idea of what we are invalidating. So let's take a quick look at this markup. Okay. Now over here, if you take a look at this block over here, this block, it doesn't know about node tag, right? The block only knows about this cache tag, block main content. Okay, because your main content could be rendering anything, correct? Right? Now let's say
We have to maximize the screen. We don't see the font.
you don't see the. Do you guys see the markup right now?
No, it's
HTML?
the fonts are too small to see.
Uh,
Yeah, it's better now. You can still maximize.
is it better now?
Yeah, it's okay.
Good. So you see that this is a simple HTML wherein you have regions have blocks, and blocks, they have views, or blocks could have nodes. Okay, and nodes and indirectly they have fields. So let's take a look at this block, which is the main content block. Okay, now let's say you are on a new node/17 page. Now this block main content is going to render your node data, correct? Now each of the fields in this node, they are separate render arrays, right? So the field which is displaying the data about user, it's dependent on a cache tag of the author who has created it. Let's say user:2. Okay. Similarly, there's another body field probably which is dependent on the type of filter which has been selected for the content, and it has two file entities which were uploaded, which are file 3 and file 5, file ID 3 and file ID 5. Okay. So each of these are separate render arrays, right? But when combined into an HTML, the main wrapper, the wrapper which is going to wrap this data, it also needs to know about these cache tags so that it's able to invalidate cache tags dynamically. And you don't really need to manually go ahead and say that this cache has been invalidated. That's why invalidate this cache as well. You guys getting the point? Okay. So for example, your node, it has a cache tag node 17, but it's going to render two fields which are the author field and your body field, which have separate cache dependencies, cache tags, user:2 and filter related ones. Now, until or unless your node, it knows about these cache tags, it cannot invalidate the cache for node. Correct? Correct? Okay. So how many of you know about event bubbling in JavaScript? How does event bubbling in JavaScript work? Okay, so let me take a simple example. So let's say there's a HTML DOM, something like this, okay? And you have applied some JavaScript event listener on one of the inner elements, okay? For it to propagate outside, this event listener, it needs to be bubbled across the HTML DOMs, correct? Across its parents, right? The same thing happens in Drupal 8 right now. To make sure the correct cache tags are invalidated. Can you guys see the HTML markup correctly? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. So what happens with cache bubbling is this. So while validating your cache tags, what Drupal does is it goes ahead and looks up for cache data in its children render arrays. Okay. Now, any cache tag which is there in its children render array will be bubbled up to the parent. Okay. And that's how the cache tag for your node would become something like this: node 17 user2 filter format file, and so on. And that's how it takes care of maintaining your cache dependencies and invalidating the cache correctly. Okay. Do you guys follow me, or is there a confusion here?
So just Piyush,
I'm pretty sure it's something.
I actually missed a little bit of your session, but just to can you explain how this cache is going to work when I'm seeing a page with a block on it? What happens in the backend?
So when you see a block on a page, what happens is you actually.
If I don't have page cache turned on.
If you don't have page cache, so Drupal 8, you cannot disable page cache in the first place.
Okay. So if I'm an authenticated user.
Yeah. So in that case, what happens is your cache tags, they are defined with the blocks. So let's say you're rendering this block content only, okay, in some region, okay. Now in this block, you are going to render a node. Now node will have its render array, okay, and
Correct.
Node will have fields. Fields will have their separate render arrays, which will be nested inside your node's render array as hash children, right?
Yeah.
Now, whatever cache tag you have defined for hash children cache, it will get bubbled up to the node. Now, since node is a children of block now, it will get bubbled up to the node. So any cache tag which was defined for a field, it gets moved up to the block level.
Okay.
Got the point? So that's that's what this HTML representation is trying to explain. So initially you had just block main content as a cache tag, but while invalidating the cache or validating the cache, it bubbles up the cache metadata to the parents. And your HTML data cache tag obviously will have all cache tags from all regions. So there is a Drupal module which allows you to see this visually. Actually, it's still in development, but let me quickly try to pull that up.
So unless I explicitly write these cache tags in my HTML, I will not.
You will not need to
take advantage of the caching. Is that
no,
right?
This is just an HTML representation. This has nothing to do with the way data is rendered correctly.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a module called as RenderWiz. Hold on. So I'm just gonna enable this module on my Drupal 8 site, -y render this. Because the problem here becomes like now, if something is going wrong, how do you validate which cache tag is where without without being able to look at the render layer? Correct? Hello.
Yeah, we can see your URL.
Yeah, can you see my screen? I'll have to share my Chrome window. Chrome. Okay. Let me know if you can see my Chrome screen.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. So can you see my dev console?
You can see a Drupal page.
Yes, dev.
You can see the dev tools as well, right?
Yeah, dev dot, yeah, correct.
And you can see the Chrome inspector open over here, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, I'll let it load. So basically what this module does is it basically injects your cache tags into the HTML into the HTML as HTML comments. So what it allows you to do is it allows you to visually see what all cache tags this HTML element is dependent upon.
Okay.
Is it loaded?
Not yet. We're waiting.
Is the internet connection an issue or is it like Hangout?
So it's up to the entity level?
Yeah, it's up to HTML level actually.
Okay, HTML level.
Yeah, till the HTML tags you'll see everywhere wherever the cache tag is being used or what cache tag is being used. You guys can hear me properly, right?
We can hear you very well, but we can't see your screen.
It definitely shouldn't be an internet connection issue.
Anything else you have turned on that's using internet? No, right?
I don't think so. No, nothing.
Because we are not using this Wi-Fi for anything else. This is solely for the broadcast.
Let me try switching my connection, Shamla. Just give me 1 second. It'll take me
Sure.
short while. Hello.
Hi.
You can hear me well now? I
Yes.
mean, audio is better, right? Audio should be better with this connection.
We could see your screen also. Only Chrome is not.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes. Now we can.
Now we can. Yes.
Okay. Let me stay on this connection in that case. Okay. So, yeah. So this module is called as RenderWiz. It is still in dev phase right now, but it allows you to see your cache tags. So can you guys see the HTML comments over here? Do you guys see the HTML comment over here, which says tags : and this array? This
So it injects these. It injects these tags into the HTML, the cache tags.
Correct. As an HTML comment.
Okay.
It also allows you to. It also gives you a couple of functions, which allows you to visualize things well. But I think it's broken right now. But I'll quickly show you what it does. So let's say I want to see all of the tags which have no :1 as a value. So what it does is it it returns 0 values. Let me go for a different one. Marks minus a sorry. Marks minus h. So it also provides a nice way to visualize it. It's probably broken right now a little bit. So it highlights all of them in a different color and everything. It makes use of your 3D rendering, which Firefox has, 3D inspect, and allows you to inspect through the elements which have these cache tags. This is a nice module which will allow you to debug things related to cache in near future, but yeah, it's not there yet to completely support that. Okay. Any questions before we move on to the next topic? No? Okay.
I think we are fine.
Okay. So now you guys must be thinking of the next thing, which is reverse proxies. How does Drupal 8 integrate with reverse proxies as it did with Drupal 7, Varnish CD, and how does it integrate with them?
You have one question. Piyush, 1 second.
Yep.
You say your name and then speak to them.
Piyush, I'm Pushpendra Tiwari. Your page program.
He's a 4th year SRM student.
Okay.
So there's a question like in Drupal 7 we used to like define max age, right?
Right.
In Drupal 8, what is the age of a tag like cache tag? How long last it will be there?
What's the? I couldn't get it. Shamla, could you repeat it for me?
Yeah, the max age of the cache.
The expiry date of the caching in Drupal 8, we could set the duration of the cache table.
Yeah.
Cache validity.
Using max age.
How do we do that in?
It's the same.
Drupal
It's the
8?
same configuration as in Drupal 7. It's same configuration available under development.
There is a created and expired date.
Yeah. It's the same configuration which you used to be there. Sorry,
Can we
I'm not able.
restrict the age of a tag?
Yeah.
Restrict the age of a tag.
Obviously. So what you could do is whatever element you're rendering, give it max minus age colon the value. For the array, it becomes this. The cache age becomes this.
What if we are not giving max age?
Sorry, it's not hashtag.
What if you don't give the max age in the array?
Then it will depend on the cache tags. They'll become by default go to -1.
Won't it depend on the node, like till the node last for which you are defining the cache?
I think they will. Maybe they will delete it on node. They'll remove the tag on node.
So
Yeah, cache invalidating will happen on entity save.
Yeah, when you delete a node, your associated tags will get deleted.
Okay. So
The tag itself will get deleted.
Yeah. So it's not like it is not mandatory to actually give all the time max age. Is it in Drupal 8?
You don't need to mandatorily give max age, right? The default value is -1. What does -1 signify? Infinite.
-1
tag.
is unlimited, infinite.
Okay.
So if you're not giving max age,
Just default back to your site configuration.
If we don't give max age, it gets set as -1. Is that right, Piyush?
Yeah, it'll get set to -1, or if you have defined a configuration in the performance settings, it'll take that value.
If you set it in the performance setting, it will take that value. Otherwise, it will take max age as -1.
And Piyush, this is Mandakini here. If I don't want to come here, Piyush, this is Mandakini here. So if I don't want to give cache at all,
I don't want to.
She's asking, what if I don't want to give cache for a block?
Cache for a block. You can
Manipulate the cache you mean.
Yeah, like, but then sometime if you don't clear the cache, you have added a new entity, I mean a new page or some data will come here. So it takes like I have a views or I have a blog and I added something or I made some changes. It don't reflect unless I clear the cache. So I want to make sure that it don't impact the cache.
No, she wants to disable for a certain
Or
block.
a block or
Just a certain block. This particular block where we know it node 7, I want to disable the cache. How do I do it?
either block, views, select.
Yeah, so you see, you can obviously go ahead and use a hash hashtags and give it null value. It'll work, but it's not advisable to do that because if you're creating a view, you know that what will depend on, right? If you're not doing any special handling, it'll obviously go ahead and depend upon your entities. If you're doing any custom handling, you of course know like what your cache should be dependent upon. So in that case, the right approach to this would be make it depend on a cache tag.
So I have certain views which periodically changes its values rendered in that page. So
Which
I'm
one?
going to that. I have a certain view which periodically changes based on different users.
Based
And,
on different users.
Different user inputs or anything which changes dynamically. So I am disabling the cache in that particular view. Is that advisable or is it mandatory to enable cache in views?
See, nothing is mandatory. It's always advisable to use cache because that will take off load from a lot of load from your MySQL server.
How do I enable user-specific caching?
Can I enable user-specific caching for that view? And what do I write? How do I write my cache clearing rules? Supposing it's not a time-based cache rule, okay, and it's an event-based cache rule. How do I write it in Drupal 8? And how do I set a user-based cache?
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll come to that. We already have that covered in this session.
Can you go in admin like because we are not writing any code for views or block. So
No,
I
don't think we have anything in admin config to handle this cache tag. You'll have to handle that manually in a custom code.
Oh no, we are not asking about tag specific cache.
User-specific
views that is dependent on users.
Right. So for that you have cache contexts, which will come to it in a couple of slides.
Okay.
So basically you're talking about various cache variations which you can have for a specific view. Right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That's what's handled via cache context in Drupal 8. We'll come to that.
Okay. No, he said that
Coming
they will.
back
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next point which we're going to talk about is how does Drupal allow you to work well with reverse proxies. So in Drupal 8 you have a header with a response which is called as X Drupal Cache Tags header. Okay. Now the first thing that you need to do to enable it is again you'll have to go to your can you see my PHP Storm screen? Hello? Hello, can you guys see my editor?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you increase the font size, please?
Yeah, I'll increase it. Better?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. So you'll have to enable this setting in your services.yaml. So first of all, you'll have to go inside your site's default and copy your default services.yml, create your own copy of services.yml for it to take effect. By the way, services.yaml is used to override any service that is defined in Drupal in your core or your contrib modules. You could always override your services using a custom services.yml file over here. Okay. So this you'll have to set it to true for Drupal to be able to spit out this X Drupal cache tag header. Now what this tag, what this header has is, let's take a look at it live. So can you guys see my Chrome screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to reload my home page. Okay, and inspect the response headers. So do you guys see my screen now? Do you
Yes.
see this inspector window and see the X Drupal cache tags highlighted?
Yes.
Yeah.
So all of the cache tags which are being used on this page, or this page is dependent upon, is listed under this cache tag header, which your Varnish or CDN or any other reverse proxy can pick up and use to invalidate the cache which it has stored. Okay, sounds simpler than Drupal 7. Hello, does it sound simpler than Drupal 7? I mean, anyone who has worked with Varnish.
Yeah, so which means that if there is a change in that header, Varnish
Yeah.
will repick the code. Is that right? That's what it means.
Yeah. So Varnish can pick up this header and basically check for the cache tag which is getting rendered, which it needs to invalidate basically. So let's say it has this page. Okay, now there's another page called node/9 which is getting rendered over here. Okay, see the highlighted one?
Yeah.
It has a cache tag node:9. So let's say I go ahead and edit node:9, node 9 page. Okay, now Varnish will receive this header, a change in node:9 context when the node redirect to the node view page happens. Correct?
Correct.
So in that case, it will be able to invalidate the cache for node 9, right?
For all other pages which have node 9 in it, will also get
Correct.
invalid.
Yeah. And that's what it can figure out from this cache tag header.
So this one you are talking push for a Varnish. I don't have Varnish then.
This X Drupal cache
Any
is
reverse
called
proxy.
Reverse proxy. It's
Any
talking-
reverse proxy. Not just Varnish, any reverse proxy can make use of these headers and do cache invalidations. Okay. Any questions? No? Okay. Now this is one of the most interesting things that has come in Drupal 8. How do we handle the uncacheable items? How do we not wait for the response from uncacheable items and move forward? So basically, if an item which has a max age of 0, it cannot be cached, right? So Drupal would not go ahead and look for it in the cache, and it will try to do a query for it, bring back the data and build the markup, and then move on to the next step. Correct? How do we avoid this blocking in Drupal 8? So examples of these things could be render arrays which are dependent on user context. So for example, something which is going to vary for each user. It's again case-to-case basis. It's generally not advisable to have cache based on per user, because then your number of cache variations becomes huge. If your website has like 1 lakh users, you'll have 1 lakh cache variations for each cache, for each item which you're caching, and is dependent on users. Any item which has a max age of 0, it obviously is not cacheable, and anything that is dependent on session or user again. So in Drupal 8 early phases, there was a post-render cache callback which was introduced, and this has been replaced with lazy builders in Drupal 8. Now, anyone who has heard of the term lazy builders, lazy loaders?
Lazy load, yes.
Lazy load, yes. It's very similar to that concept, lazy builders in Drupal 8. Now, what it does is, so if anyone is interested in knowing what work has been done around this, there's a Drupal.org issue link which you can follow. But how or what lazy builders are? So what Drupal does now is when when it's rendering a render array, when it encounters a render array and it finds a lazy builder inside it, it will generate a placeholder for it, which will be unique, a unique placeholder. And along with that, it'll generate whatever markup which it can pull from cache. So whatever it can pull from cache, it'll pull from cache. Whatever it cannot pull from cache, it'll just generate a placeholder to be processed later. Okay. So once all of the cached content is generated, the next thing is it'll go ahead and process all of the placeholders.
This is the loaded on DOM, completion of loading of DOM, or
No, not, yeah, the DOM is,
not connected to DOM, but more connected to the.
no, the DOM building is done now. DOM building is done,
Okay.
but nothing is presented to the user until or unless your placeholders are processed. In Drupal core, I'm talking about Drupal core right now.
Okay. Okay.
Because we'll come to other stuffs as well, which are related to this, but I just don't want to complicate things right now. So yeah, what happens now is, now each of these placeholders, they are processed by their callback functions and everything. Okay, and whatever data is returned, it's injected into these placeholders. So I have a quick example. Let's say there is an ice cream. There's a block which is going to return you ice cream flavors, which is random. Okay, but this block also needs to spit out some static data, which is going to be consistent, correct? So let's say my block is going to render today's ice cream flavor is chocolate. So chocolate, vanilla, chocolate chips, grapes, blah, blah. They become the dynamic part, but the part which says today's ice cream flavor is, it's static, correct? So we can cache this part, but we cannot cache the dynamic part right now. So the dynamic part becomes uncacheable, and the static part, it becomes cacheable. So one render array could have a cached part and a uncached part, which will be loaded by a lazy builder. So this is a lazy builder service which has been created. Now all it needs to do is, it needs to provide a lazy callback, which is going to return you some data. To be processed later. Now, when you're, you see this $build part, the markup part. Hello.
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah. So this is the static part, which is going to get generated automatically, well, via cache. Okay. And this is the part which is going to say we need to process some data later on, which is this lazy builder, and it's going to call this function. Via this function, we are going to populate this placeholder later in the phase. Okay. Also, it says hash create placeholder is equals to true, which means that I want Drupal to generate a unique placeholder along with this markup. Okay. Is it confusing? Is it getting confusing? Or is it clear?
No, we're good. You want to see now the page,
Okay. Yeah. So create placeholder will make sure that a unique placeholder is generated. The lazy builder will make sure that the data which is computed out of this function is moved back into this placeholder. Okay. It also takes a set of arguments which will get passed to your lazy callback function, which we declared above. So if it needs to take arguments, this will get passed from here. Okay. So in Drupal core, the processing of placeholders happen via single flush strategy. So single flush strategy basically says that render all of the markup, which can be cached, generate all the placeholders in that Go itself, and then process all of these placeholders at once. Until or unless these placeholders are processed, you do not show any data to the end user. Okay. This is what your response object will return back. But Drupal core also provides you now with a way to define your own render strategies, right? So suppose you want to handle these placeholders via JavaScript. Maybe later you don't want to handle these placeholders. You want to present the users with the cache content first, and then handle these placeholders one by one via JavaScript, probably. Because these tags, they are HTML tags right now. Now these tags could be replaced with Ajax commands, which will go ahead and actually fetch data from the callback function and return back to the browser. So this is what BigPipe is utilizing right now in Drupal 8. So BigPipe has done nothing but created an end-flush strategy wherein one HTML response is sent across. So whatever cache data is available, it's presented to the user, and then along with that there are n embedded Ajax responses. Now by embedded Ajax responses, we mean to say that these are not separate HTML requests which go for each Ajax response, but they are injected, streamed into the HTML markup and into the placeholders, the response. So the result is the data, it's presented to the end users as soon as it's ready, and the time to first byte, it becomes very low. Now I know there would be a lot of questions around it. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead with your questions if you have any around BigPipe or the render strategies. I mean, did you understand the concept in the first place?
Yep, Piyuesh, about placeholders. I am defining a custom menu only by mentioning this placeholder. It gets entered into this caching, right?
Can you come again?
These placeholders.
Mm-hmm.
I am defining a page right now. I am defining a menu and it's callback. Only if I explicitly define these placeholders, it will get into this caching mechanism, right?
No. So placeholders are only for things which cannot be cached. So if you're rendering something via your page callback which can be cached, you always go ahead with the cache tags and cache contexts.
So this
only if you have something which cannot be cached. So for example, this was something which we could not have cached because every time we need to generate the ice cream randomly.
So in a way, I exclude these content not to be cached. Only then I'll have to use this placeholder.
Correct. So one of the good example for this is your comment form in Drupal 8. So this comment form, it needs to appear differently for different users, right? So for example, if I'm logged in as Piyuesh, I'll see my name and email address over there, right?
Yeah.
While for an anonymous user, it'll appear as a text field, correct?
Yeah.
So still, there is some part which is cacheable and some part which is not cacheable right now. So it could be completely cached for anonymous users. So that part is done. Now, when it comes to the authenticated user part, there is some part of the form which can be cached and some part of the form which cannot be cached. Correct?
Yes.
Wherein you generate the username and email ID. So username and email ID, they become the lazy builders. Rest of the form gets generated as it is.
Okay.
So what happens is when you render your Drupal node page, your entire page is generated. Your placeholders are generated for username and user email address. Okay. Now these unique placeholders, they get replaced when your single flush happens. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, if you want to go more into the details about these cache strategies, you can read around chain cache strategies. I think it's called that in Drupal 8. Okay. I think I'm running out of time. Okay.
We have another 20 minutes. We can listen to you, but based on your availability of time.
Yeah, I'm available, Shamla.
Okay, then perfect.
So,
It's fine. We continue.
Piyush, do we need to do any coding if we are for a big file? Like
For
we are
what?
writing a custom module. Do
Mm-hmm.
we take care anything for big file?
Anything for what?
Big file.
Do we need to write anything separately, especially for big to enable big pipe?
No, 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 no. So you need to just enable the module and it'll work out of the box.
We don't need to do anything in our module.
No, I'll come to that as well because placeholding is something which we have discussed right now. But do so for big pipes to work, you need placeholders, correct?
Okay. So placeholder will it's specific to big pipe or it can
Yeah, that's what
work
I'm coming.
normal.
Yeah, that's what my next point is. So that's what
Okay.
my next question was actually. So do we need to always define placeholders for things that cannot be cached manually? So no. At times yes, but mostly no, I would say. So there's a concept called as auto placeholding in Drupal 8 right now. So if Drupal encounters a render array which has either of these three, either its max age is set to 0, or its cache invalidation rate is very high. Invalidation rate could be high when if it's something that's based on session, for example. For example, if you set something with a cache context of session, so with every session, your cache needs to get invalidated, right? That's a high invalidation rate. High cardinality is something when you have n number of variations for the same cache. So, for example, for user one, you have one cache index. For user two, you have another cache index for a user dependent cache, basically. So, for all of these three cases, by default, Drupal core would go ahead and create placeholders for them. Okay. Now, there's also a place wherein you could override this. Again, going back to services.yml, can you guys see this PHP Storm window?
Yeah.
Okay. In services.yml, there is a key called as renderer.config. Okay. And under that, you have auto placeholder conditions, right? So this is the one that's defined by the core. Now, if on your website, you're doing some custom code and you know that this is something that I want to get auto placeholders, get also auto placeholdered. In that case, you could add those cache context or cache tags over here. Okay. So let's say you want to enable BigPy for a block, and this block, it has some custom cache context, say example cache context. Okay. So in that case, all you would need to do is add example over here. That's all you would need to do.
Example is what?
Example is a custom cache context which you have created for your custom needs on your website. Okay. Or maybe you want to placeholder based on language as well. So let's say you have a website wherein you are going to render multiple language blocks on a single page. Okay. And you want all of these language blocks to get loaded by a big pipe. Okay. All you need to do is pass it a language context over here. Okay. Make sense? Okay. So yeah, this is the default condition in the core, and you can always override them in services.yml. Okay. Now coming to cache context, someone had a question around having variations of cache, right? So this is something that will answer your question. So cache context, they are nothing but request dependencies, and they basically say, so for example, if a block, it has a cache context of user, it says that cache my block based on the user ID of the user who's accessing it. Okay. So let's take an example here. You guys see my Sublime window?
Yeah.
Dollar element hash cache. Cache context. I'm not sure if it's context or context, but yeah, I'll just put it context here. User and element cache tags. I'm going to define a couple of tags here. Let's say node :1 and language. Okay.
What's extension of this file use?
Sorry?
What's file extension? .php or what? I mean, where are you getting this program?
This is a file wherein you're rendering your block basically. So it's a plugin. It's a .php file only, but it's a block plugin which you'll write into it. So right now I'm just using it as a scratchpad for now.
Okay.
Just to show you the code inside, what you'll write inside your block. Okay. So let's say you have a block which is fetching data from node :1, and it also has a flag. Okay, a user-based flag. Okay, which says bookmark. Okay. Now let's say now its value would obviously vary based on each user. So if a user has bookmarked it, its value will be bookmarked, or otherwise it will be bookmarked. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now
Another 10 minutes, Piyuesh.
yeah, almost inshallah. Okay. So now what happens is when the cache for this block will get generated, it will have a cache ID called node :1 language :en, and then user equals to 1 or user equals to 2. So this is how the cache variations will get generated based on a cache context. Does this answer your question? No? Someone had the question around cache context. So this was
Yeah,
This question was more around auto placeholdering.
yeah.
So, Piyush, because you said like it will automatically create placeholder thing. So whenever, I mean, when it will create, I actually couldn't get you that time.
So whenever your render array is being processed, okay, if it has a max age set to 0, it'll create a placeholder for that and process it later.
So whenever it will encounter that max equal to 0, it will bubble. I mean, it is
Correct.
It will append,
Yeah.
right? That creates. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Radiation, you are talking Piyuesh, like if we don't want cache for a particular content. Are you talking about this? I mean, are you trying to explain?
Someone else, someone else had a question like, let's say I have a block which needs to vary based on each user.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so in that case, you would go ahead and set a cache context set to user. And in that case, your cache generation would automatically be taken care of.
My question was that it will have an adverse effect. You said like it will have an adverse effect if we define cache based on users.
Obviously, yeah, it'll have an adverse effect because the number of cache variations will increase. I was just telling you in terms of you do have that feature in Drupal 8 to handle this. In that case, you don't cache it, you make it a placeholder.
So by disabling the entire cache for these views I'm using, will it have an adverse effect? Will my website have an adverse effect if I disable caching in
Not
one?
an adverse effect. Obviously, it'll take time to load those views, but yeah.
Other than that.
It depends upon the load on your side.
Okay.
And right? How to the complexity of your page.
Yes. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. And Drupal automatically takes care of cache context optimization. So for example, if you have two cache tags defined for a block, which is user.permissions, it'll automatically just use user, because permissions is something that will automatically vary for each user. It's smart enough to do that. And there are a couple of cache contexts which are built in core. And any other cache context which you need to write, you'll need to implement a cache context interface. And you can obviously go ahead and write your own custom cache context based on your need. Okay. Any other questions? I think we've already run out of time, but
We are working on Drupal 8 and it's a development mode. So what sort of modules should disable so that we don't need to clear cache again and again, and what sort of things we need to take care so that our development.
Yeah, so if you have your services.yml file created, you can go ahead and disable things over there. For example, you could disable your twig caching. You could disable. So you could disable your twig caching. You could enable your. You could cause your twig templates to get auto reloaded and all.
Okay, so you are saying this modifying this file is good enough for development.
Yeah, a lot of things it will provide you.
We don't need to disable modules like cache modules and all from.
You can't disable internal page cache in Drupal 8 anymore. There's no way you can disable it.
Sorry?
And in fact, you can't disable any module in Drupal 8. In fact, in Drupal 8, you have to uninstall the module.
Yeah.
Plus, disable. Yeah, you cannot uninstall your page cache module. That's always on in Drupal 8.
We have some more modules, right?
The cache, everything is stored in a database now. If authenticator user is a keep on updating his content bin, it takes more time.
No, so that's what the advantage of Drupal 8 render caching is. So caching is dependent on each block now. It's not dependent on the entire page.
Okay, a particular node itself, it's left 1 lakh node in the table means particular node. If you update that node means.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you properly. Can you come close to the mic?
It's take an example of node is the site. Okay, if we edit one particular node means it's definitely take more time while editing. How it's Drupal 8 is handled?
Editing the block. That's what you're saying?
Everything is there in Drupal 8 tables, cache tables, and all. So if you update the content means it will take more time. So each time.
So what I'm saying is updating the content will take time for rendering that content the next time, but post that it'll again be in cache. And again, the advantage here is it'll just need to refresh the cache for that content. It will not need to refresh the cache for other parts of the page. So for example, if you have a search block, you have menu, you have headers, they'll still be loaded from the cache. Only content that will need to get refreshed is your main content which you have edited.
Let me confirm whether I got a question of Drupal right. So he says basically in Drupal 8 there are many cacheable items. Earlier in 7, basically objects were cacheable. Now even the renderable arrays are cacheable in Drupal 8. That is more likely to increase the size of the cache table. So that being the case,
I'm sorry.
Updating the larger table is going to take more time, right? It's going to be an intensive operation.
I couldn't hear you properly. Can you just come again?
Piyuesh?
Yeah.
I think numbers concerns about the size of the cache table. Since we have more cacheable items in Drupal 8, will not that increase the size of the cache table, and any operation on the cache table is going to be intensive since the table is.
Yeah, but then Yeah, but then you go for memory-based caching and all. Memcache, fetching data from, even if it's huge, it'll take much lesser time.
Not about fetching. We're talking about cache again.
Yeah. I think. Okay, you have answered it.
Here's one more question regarding the auto placeholdering. Piyush,
Shamla, do we have really the time?
Okay, last question for the day.
Okay. Yeah.
Piyush, there is a question on auto placeholdering.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I will create a view block. I need to add the placeholder. Is it possible to add it, or otherwise I will disable the cache on the view block?
It is definitely possible if you're going to render it via block. So you could use, you could alter the block and then appropriately add your cache entries, add a lazy builder to it, and it should work.
So I need to alter the block. Then only I need to add the
Right.
for the block.
Yeah, there's no direct way you can do that via config.
Then one more thing, this search in the site. Normally
Sorry?
search is not catchable, right? Search
is not.
Search.
Okay.
For Drupal 8, it's also the search is not catchable. Or it will be content or not.
You're talking about search results or
The search results.
be cached. It based on URL context. So you have a cache context called as URL, and it could be cached, but it doesn't make sense to cache the search results because well, it depends on the use case. Actually, I'm not very sure if in code it supports the caching of search results or no, but as per me, it should not be cached.
So it will be caches, then the content will not replicated in the search result, right?
Content will not?
Content will not update on the search result.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that it's not ideal to do that, but I'm not very sure. But for use cases, it makes sense actually. Like websites which have a lot of data, but they don't publish a lot of data very frequently. So if you can do caching for those kind of sites, right? And whenever a new content is updated, you just flush your cache.
Last question, final question.
Piyush, that was a very insightful session. Thank you for that. So,
Welcome.
though there are many sophisticated caching options are there in Drupal 8, still it is being said that Drupal 8 is slow when it compared with the Drupal 7. How do you see that?
Yeah, it's definitely slower compared to Drupal 7.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things. The cache layer, it's getting bootstrapped a little later compared to your Drupal 7. Moreover, since Drupal 8 has moved into object-oriented programming aspect, it takes time for Drupal to look up through the files. So to inspect through the files for anything which you have requested.
Okay.
Things are there which is making it slow. Also, regarding making the cache layer bootstrap a lot earlier, there is already a issue which is being worked upon on Drupal.org.
So you say
So
that
once that is in, so once it's in, it'll be able to bootstrap as fast as Drupal 7, and in fact, a little lesser as well.
okay. So you say that though there are pros, equal number of cons are there. So we have only remote chances or marginal chances of improvement. Is that right?
Less chances of what?
Improvement, performance improvement.
Performance improvement, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah.
By
So
default,
yeah, by default, Drupal 8 is slower than Drupal 7 for sure.
okay. So
It's benchmarked. I mean, it's definitely slower.
slow. So
Yeah.
what is that we can do as an admin? I mean, without writing a code or with a simple configuration itself, how can we make it optimized?
All you could do right now is apply memcache varnish and those sort of things to improve the performance. BigPipe would give you perceived performance, a good perceived performance, in fact. So with BigPipe, you would be able to get the first byte within like 99 milliseconds or something like that. But then again, the entire page load would take the same time as a normal Drupal 8 website takes.
So PHP is
Without
still a
BigPipe.
problem for us, right? That we have to.
Number of files.
That means
Similar, not PHP, the way Drupal 8 is bootstrapped right now.
okay.
Cache layer, it gets bootstrapped a little later in Drupal 8. Okay, so if we could bootstrap the cache layer a little earlier, it'll. So I had this conversation with Fabian when I was there in New Orleans, and he mentioned that they're already working on a Drupal.org issue regarding this to trigger the cache layer earlier. And yeah, once it's in, we should have at least
Then it doesn't have
equal
to
loading
pass
time
all the
compared to
time.
Drupal 7.
Caching is faster to retrieve the cache, right? It's higher than the bootstrap.
Thank you so much, Piyuesh, for joining us. We in fact having tea, and I'm feeling so guilty I can't share it over a Google Hangout. Thank you so much for joining and being with us for over an hour and a half. I think your session was really insightful here, and we'll see if we can get all the members to share some feedback on your session and share it with you. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thanks, Chandra. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.